My vengeance ends now.
God of War has been and continues to be an absolutely epic video game saga. The first title, upon release for the PS2, made huge strides in what was possible in terms of combining aspects of story, environment, puzzle challenges, and tons of the brutal gore that the series is known for. Today, we're going to be looking at a few odds and ends regarding the Mammoth franchise, a few things that you fans may have never noticed or cared to venture off and research to find out. So let's dive into 10 things you probably didn't know about the God of War franchise. Kratos' ghostly complexion. Just by looking at his pallid complexion, you might think Kratos is in desperate need of some Mai Tais on a beach in the sun somewhere. However, he's been dubbed the Ghost of Sparta for another darker reason. His ghoulishly white skin is actually the result of the angered gods permanently branding the ashes of his dead wife and child on his skin, serving as a constant reminder of an already harsh pain.
My wife, my child, how?
This was the punishment Kratos received when he was duped into unknowingly pillaging his hometown and murdered his family in the process. Seems like a pretty harsh punishment considering he was tricked into doing this by his old master.
Ares!
But the gods are harsh, and even being the victim of trickery is a punishable offense. Liking this video so far? Hit that subscribe button and notification bell. The notorious human sacrifice scene. There was a scene in God of War 1 that, while it was included in the game for North American audiences, was deemed just too horrific for European and Japanese players. The scene is unquestionably brutal. The gods require a human sacrifice from Kratos in order to proceed through the level. Not only that, but the sacrifice falls upon a helpless, desperate soldier who's locked in a cage. Upon greeting Kratos, the soldier becomes filled with hope that a fellow warrior will save him from his grim fate of starving to death alone in a cage. He asks Kratos to save him so that they may return to Athens, and then things turn very dark for this poor fellow. Kratos responds only with,
The gods demand sacrifice.
The soldier's hope for release is crushed and his desperation intensifies. The player is then made to kick the cage up a ramp while fighting enemies towards an apparatus spouting fire. As Kratos and the soldier get closer and closer to this apparatus, the player can hear begging and pleading, but ultimately the cage gets kicked into the searing flames and the soldier is burned alive.
No.
In the European and Japanese versions, the wickedness of this scene is blunted by exchanging the pleading soldier with a furious undead guy, taking the sting out for players, but ultimately defeating the purpose of a, quote, human sacrifice. The original look of Kratos. Kratos designer Charlie Wen didn't have much to go off of when he originally began designing our beloved anti-hero. The story hadn't yet been developed, and the game as a whole was in very early stages of development. The initial direction series creator David Jaffe delivered to Wen was a character who was, quote, brutal, antisocial, violent, pissed off, and F you. Come into work, get angry, and see what happens. This is the Kratos that we know and love today, and although the concept for his personality might not have changed much from the original idea, his physical appearance transformed drastically. Many design ideas came to the table, and included everything from Kratos wearing heavy armor and helmets to having long, flowing hair. After all the designs were out, the team began stripping away all of that armor and other elements that were not entirely necessary, until they felt they had the essence of a raw and brutal barbarian. The Kratos who is indeed the embodiment of David Jaffe's original guidance to Mr. Wen. Calling Kratos. Did you know that you can call Kratos in David Jaffe? Well, kind of. At the end of the first God of War, there's a very interesting Easter egg contained within two statues that appear to be scenery. However, if the player attacks and destroys those statues, a code is revealed, a 10-digit code. Turns out it's a phone number, and if you go ahead and call it, you'll hear a pre-recorded conversation between Kratos and David Jaffe.
I offer you my congratulations and my respect.
Kratos congratulates the player for their accomplishment in finishing the game, and then proceeds to, interact with David Jaffe for about 2 minutes. Spoiler alert, things don't really end well for David. The Easter egg is an example of what we call transmedia.
I know where it is. It's in your butt.
Because it takes place outside of the game and over a phone line in real life. This makes it one of the most unique Easter eggs in video game history. Here's the phone number for the lazy. Yes, it still works today. Give Kratos a ring. 1-888-447-5594. Kratos' Tattoos. One of the most notable things about Kratos is the spiraling red tattoo wrapped around his body.
But look who just got herself a sick new tat.
One would almost assume that the color red was an intentional symbol for all the bloodshed Kratos is responsible for throughout his journey. But that's just not the case. In the original concept art, right up until a few days before launch, the tattoo color was set as blue instead of red. The team was happy with this choice and ready to launch the game. However, a few days beforehand, David Jaffe realized that the tattoo design bore an uncanny resemblance to that of the barbarian class from Diablo 2, which is also draped in a swirling blue tattoo. Rather than changing the design of the tattoo to be less like that of the barbarian from Diablo, they simply changed the color of the tattoo from blue to red, which, again, we can all probably agree is a pretty suitable color for an enraged, bloodthirsty demigod. ESRB wasn't paying attention. The Electronic Standards Rating Board are the guys and girls who determine the ratings for games. They make the little icon that you see on the back of the case, stating which audiences the game is intended for. While no one is arguing that God of War isn't worthy of the M for Mature rating, which depicts that there's violence, nudity, and strong language throughout the game, the rating is not entirely accurate, as there's no foul language. We can only assume that the ESRB got a little bit lazy here and slapped the generic M rating on the game because it met 2 out of the 3 criteria, but didn't bother editing the rating stamp to reflect the lack of foul language. In fact, the only F-bombs you'll find in the game are the ones spoken by David Jaffe in the extras footage when he's explaining how Kratos' personality came to be.
Promise you guys I'm not some arrogant developer.
So yes, we can agree Kratos is just a little bit of a jerk for mercilessly slaughtering thousands of folks, but at least he doesn't curse while in the midst of his murderous rampages.
You owe me this, Kratos.
I owe you nothing.
The voice of Hades. Here's a fun little fact you might not have known about. While it's not mind-blowing, it is kind of a tickle. But first a question. What does Hades, god of the underworld, have in common with Mr. Crab from SpongeBob SquarePants?
How about a little music to count me money to?
The answer? Clancy Brown III. Yep, the same guy who does Mr. Krabs' voice in SpongeBob does the voice of Hades too.
I will see you suffer as I have suffered.
Mr. Brown's voice has also been heard in other notable shows and games such as Rick and Morty, the new Ninja Turtles series, Mass Effect Andromeda, Warcraft The Beginning, The Venture Brothers, Family Guy, and a ton of other big-name productions. This guy really keeps busy. Kratos comes from the Greek word Cratus. Many people believe the origins of Kratos come from purely fictional beginnings, from the imaginations of the team who created and developed the original game. However, that's not entirely true. Kratos takes inspiration from the Greek god Cratus, aka the Greek god of force, strength, and power. So I guess he does come from a purely fictional beginning, but not the one most people may initially think. There are a few differences between Kratos and Cratus. First and foremost, Cratus isn't a demigod like Kratos, but rather a fully fledged, real-deal god born from the Titans. If you want to see Cratus in action, we recommend checking out a play titled Prometheus Bound, where Cratus helps lead the Titan Prometheus to an eternity of being chained to a rock for stealing the power of the flame and giving it to humans. Regular jail time just doesn't cut it for crimes that big.
Brian, there's some bad people in here.
Kratos has family. It's safe to say that Kratos doesn't have a loving family life, having killed his father Zeus, mother Callisto, and his very own wife and child. Many people assume that Kratos is without a family, but if you haven't checked out the spin-off God of War titles God of War Ascension and God of War Ghost of Sparta, you may not be aware that he does indeed have a younger brother, Deimos, who's also based off Greek mythology. He too is a complete badass warrior. In the Ghost of Sparta, Kratos has to go look for Deimos after he was kidnapped by Ares. Kratos was present for the kidnapping and even tried stopping it from happening but failed. Ares struck him down after an unsuccessful lunge which resulted in the scar across Kratos' right eye. Deimos was then taken to the Domain of Death where he was tortured by Thanatos for years. Eventually, Kratos saved Deimos, and while the brother is pissed for him not having saved him during the initial kidnapping,
I will never forgive you.
they eventually reconcile their differences.
Right, brother?
Kratos' tattoos have a mind of their own. In the original God of War, Kratos' tattoo spans through the center of his chest and onto the left side. In God of War 2, the tattoo follows the same layout, but slightly shifts down the left side of his chest more. In the third God of War, the tattoo doesn't cross over his chest, but rather gets closer to his solar plexus. While this may not be the most fascinating fact, it's still kind of a fun detail to notice if you ever decide to go back and play the original trilogy. Kratos' tattoo doesn't just look cool, there's meaning behind it. Originally, Zeus, Kratos' father, Jupiter heard a prophecy that a warrior with a large birthmark would be his undoing. To counter the prophecy, Zeus sent Athena and Ares into town to seek out Zeus's marked Deathbringer. Turns out Deimos, Kratos' younger bro, had a sprawling birthmark, making him the prime suspect in the prophecy. Ares and Athena then kidnapped Deimos to bring him to the underworld so that the prophecy couldn't come true. However, Kratos, still a teenager, tried stopping Ares and Athena but failed. He lunged at them as they sat with his younger brother atop their horse, but was quickly struck down by Ares. Ares' powerful strike left a pretty hefty scar on Kratos' face, and upon his failed attempt to rescue Deimos, Kratos tattooed himself with a replica tat of his brother's birthmark, both serving as a tribute to his brother and a reminder to never be so weak again.
I will not lose you again, Deimos.
However, it turns out that Ares snagged the wrong bro, and the mark left on Kratos was actually the mark prophesized about regarding Zeus's downfall.
He took your brother when it should have been you.
Which we now know came true in God of War 3 when Kratos took his old man down. Kratos would go ahead and hit that subscribe button and notification bell, so why don't you? And don't go anywhere, check out our other videos right now.